This video is sponsored by Professional Photographers of America. Join a community of over 30,000 photographers that includes equipment insurance, education, and business tools made specifically for photographers. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. Today we're going to be talking about how to shoot portraits, specifically in harsh lighting scenarios. Now, I know a lot of photographers struggle with this, myself included. I don't think any of us really enjoy shooting the bulk of our work, in the middle of the day. But the fact of the matter is, as you progress through your career and you get asked to do projects and paid work, or even, just shooting personally, it's good to know how to take photos at any time of the day, just so you don't have to rely on, the timing in order to get good photos. I think in the past, I would rely very heavily on sunrise and sunset for the majority of my images. And I really don't want to do that in the future. I want to be able to feel really comfortable shooting in a wide variety of different lighting conditions. So with that being said, we're going to walk you guys through a shoot that we just did and kind of explain the process, explain the gear that I used, why I used it, and how I used that to get the best images possible. We did shoot at 12:30, so very bright. California has really, really bright sun, so it was quite hot. It was about 100 degrees, but I think we got some pretty great images. So without further ado, let's get into the shoot and we'll explain to you guys how to shoot in harsh lighting conditions. So first things first, we're going to be talking about the technical aspects of shooting in harsh lighting conditions. So for this shoot, we shot with the Fuji GFX 100, as well as my favorite lens probably for the system. It is the 110mm f2. Now, the reason I chose this lens for the majority of the shots is I really like the compressed look for portraits. I also think it does a really good job of just kind of isolating your subject, especially when we were outside. We're not going to be getting a ton of background detail, specifically when the light, is so harsh. So we really needed to work with what we got. And I think the 110mm lens was definitely the best choice for this shoot specifically. Now, I could have shot these completely wide open at f2. I tended to stick to around f4 to f5 for most of these images. I wanted to make sure that I got everything in focus that I wanted to. And it's really easy to miss focus when you're shooting so wide open. However, I would recommend that you guys shoot as wide open as you feel comfortable with. Adding a little bit of bokeh to the image definitely will make it a bit more interesting. Not saying that just because it has bokeh, it's a good image, because that is definitely not the case. More so what I mean is you don't really want to shoot, at like f11, f8 for a portrait in midday. Depending on what you need to get in focus, we stuck between f4 and f5 for most of these shots. So moving on to the creative aspects of shooting in harsh light, I did use a layer of diffusion for a lot of these images because the sun was so bright. You could pick up one of these, kind of 6-in-1 kits on Amazon or B&H. It's really, really reasonably priced, and I highly recommend you having this in your arsenal, especially for when you're shooting outside and it's really bright. A lot of the time you're going to need to diffuse the light or reflect the light. For this shoot specifically, we pretty much only used the diffusion panel. But I found it really helpful because it really allowed the light to be much softer around our subject, and it just made it look a lot more natural looking. Now, I'll show you guys here a couple images taken without the diffusion layer, and then that same image taken with. So as you're looking at these images, you're definitely going to notice that the ones shot with the layer of diffusion definitely look a lot smoother. They look a lot more clean. There's no blotchy shadows or highlights. Everything is much more even and well defined, and this is what you're going to get when you essentially just soften the light. Now, you don't necessarily need a diffusion layer every single time you take photos in harsh light, but it definitely helps when the sun is directly overhead or really, really direct, from another angle. You're trying to soften the light and make it just a little bit more even. Again, I will link a 6-in-1 kit below if you guys want to check that out. They're really reasonably priced and definitely worth picking one up. When you're finally out there and ready to shoot, you're definitely going to want to look for shade or natural shadows to bring an interesting vibe to the portraits. Now, we shot with quite a few trees, which was super nice. The road that we shot on was very, very bright, but we found a couple trees to get a little bit of shade, and I really like how these images turned out. I think they're really well balanced in terms of light and composition, especially tonality, which I wasn't really expecting. A lot of the time when you do shoot in harsh light and you don't have any sort of diffusion or trees or shadows, it can look very just bright, and there's not a lot of depth to the image, and you get what I mean. It's much better to have some sort of contrast, whether that be a background or a layer of shadow to shoot with. There's a lot of stuff that you can really play with your image, especially when you have something like a tree, or even like a branch or a building or something that casts some sort of shadow or interesting light into the frame. You can really manipulate that and kind of make it whatever you want it to be. But I would definitely say that it's important to kind of mix in shots like that with shots, where you're just kind of out there with no sort of cover whatsoever. While shadows are definitely one of my favorite ways to add to a harsh light image, don't be afraid to try different ways of utilizing light in terms of backlighting. Maybe you're going to shoot a bit more direct. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about this, so don't get too stressed out if something isn't working. I know it doesn't seem like you have a lot of options because the sun is so high overhead, but you really just gotta take your time, take a little step back and relax and realize that there's actually a lot of different options that you can try out. Again, I would recommend that you definitely use some sort of diffusion or reflector because I do think that helps a lot. But again, if you don't have one of those, it's not the end of the world. So I definitely recommend just trying out a bunch of different lighting conditions and different ways of manipulating the sunlight just to see what you like the best and then roll with that. Another thing that I definitely try to do is make sure that the skin is properly exposed in camera before we continue. A lot of the time this can mean that the background is a little bit too dark or too bright, and that's okay because you can fix that in post-production. But what you can't really fix, or what's a lot harder to fix, is skin tones and making sure that they're not blown out or, you know, they have a weird cast on them because of the sunlight. You want to be able to check that stuff in camera, so make sure that the skin is properly exposed, and then you can go from there. So when it comes to editing harsh light images, you're definitely going to want to err on the side of caution when it comes to adding too much contrast or too much tonality to your image, because there's probably already a lot going on. If you guys are interested in checking out my whole editing process start to finish, I would definitely link my course down below, as well as a couple different YouTube videos on this channel talking about just how I edit and, you know, my kind of process and philosophy. But essentially the way I edited these images is I did a mix of black and white and a mix of color. But when I did the color shots, I really wanted it to feel natural and not too much color, contrast, or saturation. So I brought a lot of that down, and that definitely gave me the look that I was going for. Again, when you guys bring these images into Lightroom or, you know, your preferred editing program of choice, and they're really harsh, don't worry too much. You know, you're gonna be able to recover a lot of this contrast and color and detail. I would definitely recommend checking out the tone curve and making sure you understand that and how that works, because it's really going to be able to give you the results that you want, especially with such a high contrast image like harsh light. Don't stress too much. You'll be able to figure it out. I know it takes a while to feel comfortable not only shooting in harsh light, but also editing as well. But you guys can do it. You know, it's not impossible. It definitely takes some time and some practice. It's taken me many, many years to even get to this point. So don't give up. Be excited, you know, embrace the challenge, embrace a new genre or a new time of day of taking photos, and let's see what you guys can get. If you guys want to send me some of your photos, link your website down below. We'd love to check that out. So before this video does wrap up, I did want to thank today's sponsor, which is PPA, otherwise known as Professional Photographers of America. Now, I've been a member of PPA for almost 3 years now, and I can safely say that it is a very worthwhile investment, both as a photographer and as a small business owner. PPA is a membership-based photography community with over 30,000 members, and there's tons of different benefits and resources that you get with a PPA membership. So firstly, you get photography insurance up to $15,000 in coverage. I have relied heavily on this throughout the years to ensure all of my photography and video equipment is safe and sound. It's really just nice having the peace of mind, knowing that your equipment isn't going to, you know, somehow disappear, and if it does, you're going to be able to get that back. Also, with the membership, you get data loss recovery services, which I could see being very beneficial to high volume photographers such as weddings or events. You know, you're shooting a lot and sometimes you misplace an SD card or your SD card gets formatted and you didn't mean to. It's nice knowing that they have your back and they're going to do their best to make sure that you can get that data back. Also on PPA's website is over 900 educational videos, as well as contracts and other educational resources for you guys to grow as a small business and as a photographer. Now, to me, this seems like a pretty worthwhile investment for not only, you know, amateurs all the way up to professionals as well. This is going to be a really nice backbone of your small business, and it's also just going to give you the peace of mind, especially with that insurance, that you guys are going to be able to, you know, continue what you are doing and growing as a business. Now, if you guys want any more info on any of the things that I just said or on a PPA membership itself, definitely check the link down in the description for more information, where you guys are gonna be able to find lots of resources and details on how to become a PPA member yourself. As I said, this is a very worthwhile investment. I've been a PPA member for over 3 years now, and I can highly recommend their services. It's really helped me grow as a business and as a photographer. As always, thank you so much guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.